Hello and welcome to Really Old News. I'm the Pharaoh Nerd, and this is the first ever episode of Really Old News, the first and only series to cover the oldest news around. That is to say, any news to do with ancient history and archaeology. Released every Saturday afternoon, Really Old News will provide you with the most up-to-date recap of every major piece of the past brought to light starting Sunday each and every week. This week has been exceptionally eventful with mummified Romans, Irish idols, Russian silver, and even more being dredged up from the murky depths of history. So without further ado, let's begin the show. To begin with, stone reliefs documenting the Persian view of the 5th century Greco-Persian Wars have just been unearthed at the ancient city of Dascylium, also known as Dascylium, located in northwest Anatolia. This Persian propaganda depicts Greek soldiers being trampled under the hooves of Persian war horses, which makes sense given that Dascylion was made the capital of a province or satrapy of the Achaemenid Persian Empire, which encompassed all of northwest Anatolia, starting in 547 BC. But I imagine these reliefs turned out to be a pretty sore sight for any Persian soldiers returning home, because both wars were pretty disastrous for them. The excavations at Dascylium are being directed by this professor of this university. I'm sorry I can't pronounce these. And these reliefs were discovered while a wall built in the 8th century by the Phrygians was being unearthed. This stone and mud brick wall in itself seems pretty impressive, being 5 meters wide and once having been 7 to 8 meters high, a fitting reminder that Dascylium was the last holdout of Phrygian civilization in northwest Anatolia. Also, an exciting discovery was just made at Pompeii, which needs no introduction. Excavations conducted by the Archaeological Park of Pompeii and the University of Valencia in the Porto Sarno necropolis, just east of Pompeii's urban core, which isn't yet open to the public, have resulted in the uncovering of a tomb containing a body that was partially mummified. I know that's a lot, but just take it in. It was owned by one Marcus Venerius Secundo, whose life story and tomb serve as a testament to the social mobility the Roman Empire offered. The tomb is identified as his by a marble slab on the tomb's pediment, and he's also mentioned elsewhere on wax tablets belonging to a Pompeian banker. Initially a public slave working as the custodian of the Temple of Venus, Marcus earned his freedom and eventually garnered high status both economically and socially, as evidenced by his large tomb. The slab also informs us that he managed to become an Augustal, a priest of the imperial cult. But more notably, it offers the first direct evidence that performances were sometimes made not just in Latin, but in Greek too at Pompeii. The inscription reads that Marcus gave Greek and Latin ludi for the duration of 4 days. This essentially means that he helped organize both Latin and Greek performances at some point. But I'm betting that you wanted to hear this story when I mentioned the word mummified. The Romans usually got cremated, so even him being buried is unusual. In fact, 2 cinerary urns were found in his very tomb enclosure. The conditions of Marcus's tomb caused it to become hermetically sealed, so his white hair and even one of his ears has still survived. Just think, the parts of his face that he and other Romans saw 2,000 years ago are still here. This partial mummification may have been intentional or it may have been natural, no one seems to know yet. And in addition to Marcus's body, 2 glass bottles called unguentaria and numerous fragments of fabric were found in his tomb chamber. The remains of Marcus are currently being analyzed and conserved at the Laboratory of Applied Research at Pompeii. In other news, a massive 8.2-foot tall wooden idol made over 1,500 years ago has just been discovered at Gortnacrannog in County Roscommon, Western Ireland. The discovery was made preceding road construction in the Roscommon Bog, which covers 343 hectares at the mouth of, get this, the River Suck. This bog is the very site where the earliest wheels on the island were found in the 60s. This idol, made out of the split trunk of an oak tree, has a small human head at one end, and its body bears several notches. Less than 15 similar idols have been discovered as of yet in Ireland, and they're all smaller. They've also all been dated to around 400 AD, and this one has been carbon dated to between 252 to 413 AD, meaning that they all date to the end of the Irish Iron Age, which lasted from 500 BC to 400 AD. Given that the lower ends of some of them end in points, they may have stood upright. Our idol may have represented a pagan deity, a particular individual, or could even be a substitute for a human sacrifice, like Ushabtis in Egypt. A knife never used for any other tasks and an animal bone were found near the idol, so a ritual sacrifice may have been conducted in front of or to the idol. After all, wetlands like the Roscommon Bog were viewed as mystical places where people could interact with their gods and the other world. But most notably, this idol may have been a reaction to the spread of Christianity. Keep in mind that the Roman Empire had been officially Christian for decades prior to 400 AD. These idols have even been compared to wooden South American idols, which were produced with increasing fervor after the conquistadors arrived. This idol is currently being conserved at University College Dublin and is set to go on display at the National Museum of Ireland. News of two entirely different Russian hoards was released early this week. The first Russian hoard is from the 6th century and is comprised of the components of a Volga Finn woman's elaborate costume. Also known as the Eastern Finns, these people lived along the Volga River prior to the region being colonized by Slavs. This particular hoard was unearthed in western Russia's Suzdal district in Vladimir Oblast, just to the northeast of Moscow, which is said to be one of the centers of ancient Russian culture. More specifically, archaeologists from the Institute of Archaeology of the Russian Academy of Sciences discovered the hoard on the banks of this river as they were surveying an uninvestigated section of the center of an ancient settlement, which they were led to by fragments of jewelry which had been turned up onto the surface by agricultural activity. The treasure, which had been stuffed into a birch box, consisted of fragments of a headdress, 3 bracelets made of beads, 1 round openwork fastener plaque, over 300 beads, likely once embroidered onto a piece of clothing, and most notably, 6 hollow duck-shaped pendants once strung onto a leather cord, with metal beads. They were probably depicted because waterfowl were associated with Volga Finn creation myths, like in Egyptian creation myths, oddly enough. A metal bowl has also been found in the hoard, but it's of an earlier date than the other objects, and its origins have been traced to the Middle East, although I couldn't find where exactly in the Middle East this is referring to. The next Russian hoard is a bit more conventionally precious. The silver hoard was found on a forested hill in northwest Russia, near the village of Isady, near the site of the city of Old Ryazan, 50 kilometers away from the current Ryazan. A minimum of 17 different hoards from the 12th century alone have already been found in the area. They were buried there when Old Ryazan was besieged by Genghis Khan's grandson, Batu Khan, in 1237. It happened to be the first Russian city besieged by the Mongols. The hoard consists of wealth accrued over time, a total of 32 silver objects. These include 8 silver torques in various styles, 14 silver bracelets decorated with crosses and palmettes, 5 rings with 7 rays projecting out of each, and several triangular silver ingots called grinvas. By comparison with jewelry found in other hoards, the hoard is datable to the 11th or early 12th centuries, so it actually predates the siege all the other hoards are from. This genuine treasure trove is set to be taken to the Ryazan Historical and Architectural Museum Reserve. Thanks for watching, everyone. Next week, I'm going to come out with the second episode of this new series. So remember to like and subscribe if you want to see more of it and more ancient Egypt anecdotes.